Let's make sure that everything's working. Okay, good. Right, Barbara, we're going to wait for everyone to join the group. I did call the time for 7 o'clock.
Okay.
So let's give everyone a few minutes to get on the call. I actually wanted to check with you. I don't know where in Israel you live.
So I live in Kwasaba.
Ah, okay. All right. I realized
For
it
those,
was one thing.
yeah, for those of you who are not from Israel, that's a little bit north of Tel Aviv. And you're in Jerusalem, right?
No, I'm in Modi'in, so that's
Oh,
very
you're
much in
Modi'in.
very much in
Okay.
the center. Yes. Okay, I see we've got some people starting to come into the group. So good evening, everybody, and welcome to this very exciting Facebook Live. It's only been a week since we've been planning this event, but I've been so excited each and every day. And thank you. Hello. I see somebody's already in the group. Please, when you join, because this is StreamYard, either you need to give permission that we can see who you are, or if you don't mind in the chat, just type in your name so that when you say hello, I can really say hello to the person that I'm expecting to see on the other side of the camera. I'm going to wait until more people have joined. We'll give it a few more minutes, maybe 1 or 2 more minutes. And as you're joining, if you wouldn't mind typing in, say hello, where you live streaming with us from, if you're in Israel, if you're outside of Israel, and if you're watching this on the replay, please also type hello and say where you're from, because it's always great to see who's come back and watch this afterwards. So let's see, great, we've got a few more people joining. Okay, so I'm going to just say, for those of you who are in, I'm really grateful that you're here punctually with Barbara and myself. And you are in, Danny's here. Thank you, Danny, lovely to see you also in Modi'in. In fact, your husband
Hello.
just at my house cutting my son's hair. So he's a hairdresser. If anyone needs a hairdresser in Modi'in, he's great. I'll give a shout out to him. Ladies, if you are joining us and you're in this group, then you know that you are over 40 years old. And the reason that we are discussing what we are discussing tonight is because, in general, I get this so often from women that I'm working with. There's always this hype and this build up towards Pesach. What am I going to eat? What can't I eat? What can I eat? When am I changing my kitchen over? When I'm going to be eating all the different foods? And there's so much anxiety that builds up, as well as this feeling of being out of control. And Barbara is the perfect person for me to have as a guest tonight. In fact, I met her 5 weeks ago at a conference that we went to at the Dead Sea, which was really fabulous. And we sat next to each other over a meal, and very quickly and in a very beautiful way, she explained to me what she does. And last Sunday, I had a power session with her where she gave me a sample of the work that she does. And it was just so incredible that I felt that this is what everyone needs to hear before Pesach. So if you are feeling anxious about Pesach preparations, if you find that you generally self-sabotage over this period of time where, because you feel so out of control, you think, oh, I'm not eating the right foods anyway, so I may as well have everything that I normally deny myself, and end up feeling worse as a result. If this is something that normally worries you and concerns you, we're gonna go through so many different ideas of how to manage that tonight, both through suggestions as far as foods are concerned, and also the way that Barbara works in being able to delve a little bit more into the unconscious and subconscious. So if you'd like to, I invite you to type some questions in the chat that we'll try and go through. And if there's anything that we don't address or don't answer in this live, you are more than welcome to contact us and we can clarify that. I'm offering Barbara's services. I hope that's okay.
Yes.
For those of you who are new to the group, let me just give a brief introduction. My name is Justine Friedman, and I work as a clinical dietitian and a mindset mentor. I have been doing this work for over 23 years since I qualified. And before making Aliyah to Israel, that means, for those of you who don't know, moving from South Africa to Israel, I had a private practice in South Africa for over 17 years that I've now continued working in the same field in Israel. And it is really my mission and my passion to help women to break the dieting cycle, to get over the anxieties that we have over food, to heal the relationship with food as well. And this is not only because I've been doing this work for so long, but because it's very personal to me and struggles and challenges that I've faced in my own life, in my relationship with food and my weight. So I really feel that besides the healing that I've experienced, and I'm going to discuss a little bit more about that with Barbara tonight, that if I can give over some of the valuable skills that I've gained over the years that has really helped me and helped so many of my clients, then I am serving you in the best way possible, because I really believe that every woman should have a positive relationship with food and their body. So with that, I am going to introduce my wonderful guest, Barbara Schwark. I hope I'm pronouncing your surname correctly. I am. Oh, good. Okay.
You
And
are.
Barbara is the CEO of her company, Clear Intentions International. And she's also been doing this work for a really long time, for over 20 years. And she really helps people get unstuck. Not only does she help them get unstuck, but she helps them to make powerful and lasting life changes. So I'm going to invite you, Barbara, to give a little bit more information about how you work to the wonderful women who've joined us tonight, who've taken the time out of their very busy days and maybe family time to join us tonight. Give us a little bit more about information about what you do, and then we can continue chatting and discuss some really important topics.
Awesome. Well, first of all, thank you for having me. I'm really thrilled to be here tonight because eating is something that's dear to my heart. It's one of the, eating is one of the most challenging, things I think that we can experience in our life, because we have to eat. It's not like one of the things that you can say, okay, I'm going to cut it out of my life. It's not like alcohol or any of those other behaviors that we often use in order to help us cope. So eating is something that is part of us and continues to be part of us until we leave the planet. So before I explain to you what I do, I also wanted to just say, if you are watching this on the replay, and perhaps you're watching this at another time of the year when it's not Pesach, it's really timely to look at this in any kind of challenging situation that you might be in. Maybe you're going on vacation and you're stressing about the food, or maybe you're going to somebody's house and you're worrying about it. So allow yourself to really look at this in a broad way, and so that you can benefit from the tools and techniques that we're going to talk about for the rest of the year. So I'm an executive and life coach, and as Justine just said, I've been doing this for, I think, just about 23 years. And early on, I realized that most of us, we actually have the answers to our problems. We know what to do, but we don't do it. And then I went on a quest, and I wanted to find out what it would take for us to have an easier time to change our behavior. Because ultimately, when we change our behavior, when we change our mindset, when we change who we are and how we show up and what we do in the world, then we're going to get a different result. So whether that's about diet, exercise, well-being, or it's about any kind of goal that you want to create in your life, it's always kind of the same path. So what I realized when I dove into neuroscience and emotional intelligence is that 90% of the time, what we do and what we don't do is really driven by our subconscious and the unconscious. So 90% of us, subconscious and unconscious, meaning that 10% of our brain is our intellectual part of the brain. It's called the neocortex. And without getting too technical, just imagine that what drives you, or what moves you forward, or what holds you back, comes from the unconscious and subconscious part of the mind, and mainly the beliefs that you hold there. So if part of you says, oh, I'm good to go and I'm going to be able to, deal with the Pesach week with no problem, if some part of you in the unconscious doesn't really believe that, then you're going to have a hard time following through, because the subconscious and unconscious, they always win. The unconscious is where our fight, flight, or freeze exists. And that's a powerful force that is always, uh, thriving and wanting to keep us alive.
Well,
So
that's our survival part of our brain. Like that's what wants to keep us as safe as possible. So when that kicks in, the reasoning part flies out the window, I would imagine.
yeah, exactly. So what I do is I help you uncover these unconscious and subconscious messages, and then I use a technique to neutralize them. And oftentimes, those unconscious and subconscious messages are connected to events and circumstances that happen in your life, and they sit in your cellular memory. They sit somewhere in your consciousness, and because you haven't been able to resolve them, they sort of drive you or derail you unconsciously, and you wonder often, why can't I move myself forward? That is the reason why. We can find that in the subconscious part of our brain.
So
So that's
even if somebody, sorry to interrupt, even if somebody really and truly wants to feel in control, make good choices, I'm obviously referring here to more like food related, choices, as well as just generally like better mindset practices. If that subconscious or unconscious if there are blockages there, that is really derailing their efforts in order to be able to do that.
yeah. I recently worked with a lady who was struggling with weight and was struggling with the whole notion of wellness. And when we did this work, what we found out is that, and I knew this person very well. When we did this work, we found out that when she was 7 years old, she was in the hospital for surgery. And the way that her parents comforted her, they brought her cupcakes. And until we did this work, she had made that connection that food and the cupcakes were one of the ways that she felt comforted. And so today, one of the ways that she was comforting herself was with food. It was one of the ways that she felt safe. She was okay. Everything was going to be fine. So, and oftentimes, these are little things, not necessarily big things, that we don't remember. And when, we can bring them to the forefront, or we can be aware of them, then we can actually let them go.
That's fascinating. I often say with clients that I'm working with, because, and you mentioned this as well with food and with, if we didn't eat the same way that you could, as difficult as it is for people who are more addicted to things like alcohol or drugs or God forbid those kind of things, with food, because we have to eat to survive, you can't just rule it out of your life and just become like, that's your recovery. So I always express to them, because from the time you're born, the minute you go and you like make a noise, you either get a bottle or a breast or a pacifier or a dummy, as we call it in South Africa. So much of the soothing that we experience is done in the like orally, that we learn from a very young age, and it's reinforced from a very young age, that when you are uncomfortable, when you are in distress, this is the solution. So it's very hard for many people to break that, because these are integral to what is created literally from the day that you're born.
Absolutely. I have a 2-year-old and a 7-year-old. So I have little kids at home, and I'm consciously aware of the fact that, when my 2-year-old cries, that oftentimes, I want to think about, or I want to give her something to eat, because that's the way that she, I can soothe her quickly. And then to think about, okay, what else can I do? Or what are other ways to take care of her, so that is not, there's not necessarily a connection that's made. And if you walk through the supermarket and you see parents with their kids in the stroller, most of the time you will see that they will have something to eat in their hand, because it keeps them occupied and it keeps them quiet. So if that's what we see, then that's how we grew up too.
Absolutely. It's so interesting because this is something, and I'd love your take on it, that I deal with, and it's like one of the weeks in my group program that we discuss it, and I discuss it also with my clients one on one. That very often the way we respond to food, and especially when we are emotionally triggered, when we have challenges in our life and we immediately go to food, like that emotional eating connection, that we almost need to treat ourselves as if we have this inner child inside of us that is demanding that comfort, and be able to speak to that part of ourselves in a more mature and adult way, as if we were that mother in the supermarket choosing differently as opposed to giving the child food to eat, but rather, being able to address it from that point of view. And in fact, I can see Danny's on the call, and I'm sure one or two of the other ladies in January us did specifically spoke about this self-sabotage, but I'm interested to hear from you how you would unblock it in a less intellectual way, because I find that with the counseling that I'm doing and with the coaching that I'm doing in my work, it's very much on a more intellectual level, and people get it. They get the example of that child needing to be soothed. But when most of us are in a situation where it's too emotionally charged or triggering, and perhaps the overwhelm, whether it's holidays, whether it's the hug coming up, whether it's being around, family members that we don't always spend a lot of time with, and that in itself can sometimes be triggering. When food is something that we use in that situation, and that reasoning disappears in that moment, we don't have the presence of mind to pause and speak to ourselves in that kind of way because we just caught up in the moment. How does the work that you do help to unblock those areas so that the women in this group can experience perhaps what it would feel like to not have that extra charge and that extra trigger, so that they would prevent that self-sabotage and not look for food as the soother and the comfort?
That's a long question, and I will do my best to give a good answer. So one of the tools and techniques that I use is muscle testing. Muscle testing is something that's 2,000 years old, and it comes from the Far East. It was rediscovered around 1830 by a osteopath, actually an not an osteopath, orthopedic doctor, Dr. Lovett in Boston. And muscle testing is a cooperative test, but it's basically works like a lie detector. It very quickly reveals to yourself if you believe in something, or if that's your truth, or if you don't believe in something, it's not your truth. So I use either assertions, meaning statements, I'm okay with losing weight, or I'm okay with being fit, or I'm okay with being healthy, or I'm okay. One of the things I love to work with is I am in control of the food that I put in my mouth. So that is a very clear statement. Or visual things of where you imagine standing in front of the buffet, or anything that might be triggersome. And then I work with the muscle test to see what it does to your system. And one of the things that the muscle test will show us, if your subconscious or unconscious is in alignment, meaning is okay with it. Every time that you have a thought, you have an automatic emotional reaction, and you have your fight, flight, or freeze, your survival go, it's okay, or it's on alert. So if you make a statement like that, there will be an emotion, and if the emotion is negative and the fight, flight, or freeze is saying, ooh, I don't know, that's not a safe statement, then we'll see what is misaligned, and we'll find out, and this is all done with the muscle testing, where this is coming from. Think about at some point you had some survival behavior, or an event that happened that you interpreted a certain way, and then through a breathing or a short meditation, or there's various tools that I will use, we will neutralize it, meaning technically what happens is that the biochemistry, the way that you produce emotions, will be interrupted, and so that there's an empty sort of free space. So your neuropeptides, they won't fire. They will just be quiet, and then you can put something. You can put a new track down there. So
Yeah. So this has a lot to do then with neuroplasticity? Is it linked to neuroplasticity? Are you
yeah,
saying that those pathways though are still there, but there's no like it's not like you're traveling down those any longer? Does it remove that connection on that path? Or
yes,
I'm
it
always
removes the
fascinated
connection.
about it.
It removes the connection on the path because the way it usually works, the way emotions work is that you have a satellite dish, and the emotion comes and attaches, and the moment the connection happens between sort of satellite dish and the neuropeptide, then you have a feeling. So what we're doing is we're disrupting it, okay, so that they are not firing anymore. And
Wow.
then you can create new neuroplasticity because, Harvard did a study and they're now saying that our DNA changes, it's not permanent. And so it's kind of the same with neuroplasticity. We're constantly able to create new neuroplasticity. And so that you're rewiring, you're re educating your body to respond differently in a certain way.
That's amazing. That's incredible. So I'd love to give a demonstration of what you do. And I've been, while you're talking, concentrating on what you're saying, but also trying to think of an example that I could give that would be beneficial for everyone to experience. And because we're speaking about food and eating over Pesach, of course, it took me back to, well, okay, 3 years ago when we had just made Aliyah, and it was March of 2020, and Pesach fell out in the April of that year as well, at similar time to this year. And after making Aliyah, I gained a lot of weight. Like in a 6-month period, I gained 9 kilograms. And I was very mindful of the fact that a lot of my old triggers had come back.
Mm.
Part of it was just the different food in Israel. I think a lot of it had to do also with my hormones shifting and changing, that all of a sudden I hit perimenopause because of the stress of everything. But over Pesach time, I specifically remember making, and I don't know if it was Corona related, and I got a recipe for that. I specifically remember making these chocolate brownies and over consuming them. That the more of it I ate, the more the sugar that I craved. I wasn't feeling good. I knew intellectually what I was doing was completely against what I had been doing for so many years in my life and had healed for myself before. But there was something that just I couldn't stop it. Obviously today, thank God, I don't have that anymore. But I'm wondering if I had a statement that was aligned with that, if we could do like some kind of test to see how strong my statement is now and how well I have managed to heal myself without necessarily your wonderful work. Can we test that out?
Yeah, we can test it out. So uh, we can. We need to always do a little bit of a what I call, make sure that you can be tested, because one of the wonderful things about this technique is that if you're not well, or if you're emotionally not up for it, then the muscle test won't work. So it's if somebody's consciousness is not where they need to be. There's always a couple of things that we need to do before we can actually test a statement. And some of you may wonder how I can do this with Justine is in Modin and I'm in Kwasaba. And I'm happy you can follow up with me. You can ask me all about it. But just know that we're basically all one big energy. And if you fine tuned yourself to be able to tune into your own energy, into other people's energy with permission, then I can use myself as a proxy, excuse me, and just uh, go into Justine's energy and test her and find out what's going on. So, yes, I have permission to test you, right?
You have permission to test me, yes.
Okay. So the way it works is that we always start out with a couple of statements just to make sure that I know what a strong muscle test looks like and what a weak muscle test looks like. And I usually use my hand.
Okay.
But I don't always sit here. Most of the time, I won't sit with my hand like this because it's just easier to have it underneath the table. But for now, I will just keep it up here.
I think it's valuable for us to be able to see what you're doing. Yes.
See my hand. So if you would be willing to say, my name is Justine.
My name is Justine.
My name is Susan.
My name is Susan.
And if you would put your finger between your eyebrows for me. Okay, good. You can take it down. Okay, so that's all I need to know to make sure that I can test her. So now we would be looking for a statement. So what would be a statement that you think would work for you? And for those of you watching this, it's like totally, unrehearsed. We're just sort of going with the flow. And the statement always starts with, I'm okay with. Like, I'm okay with, what would you want to be okay with?
Wow. Okay. That's a good question. Okay. So I'm going to try and relate it to like holiday food and eating, because I think that's very important. I'm okay with enjoying Pesach food without overeating.
Okay, we've got to get rid of the without, because our little selves do not deal with double negatives well.
Okay, all right. And I teach that as well. So thank you for the reminder. Okay, so I'm okay with enjoying Pesach food. What did I say the first time? Was it even if it wasn't? Okay, I'm okay with enjoying Pesach food.
Okay, so say that statement again, please.
I'm okay with enjoying Pesach food.
Okay, so I have a weak muscle test, which means...
Wow, I really thought that would be a strong one. Oh my gosh.
Well, no, it's okay. That's why we're here. Because if there wouldn't have been any kind of juice in this topic for you, then we probably wouldn't have done this, event. So this is what it's
quite right.
all about.
Okay, this is me being very vulnerable in front of everyone. I'm clearly not okay. Let's get to the bottom of it.
So, and it doesn't mean that you're not a little bit okay. It could be that you're 95% of it, 95% of you is okay with it. It could be that there's just a tiny little bit of an opening. And this is usually what gets us, right? Like, why do we get triggered? It's because there's something that hasn't entirely healed. And we know when it's healed is because when we have a different relationship to it. And so just because you're bringing it up means like, okay, I want to change my relationship with it entirely. And so that I can, feel good about myself. Okay, so I'm okay with enjoying Pesach foods, right? Is that what you said?
That's what I said, yeah.
I have to write this down. So now I'm going to go into my technique, which is, by the way, called neuroemotional coaching. I trademarked it. And I'm going to see what emotion is connected. And I'm doing it, there's thousands of emotions out there. So I'm doing it in a way that will speed up the process. So what I will ask Justine to do is to repeat that statement. And while she's repeating the statement, I am testing, certain emotional categories. So if you would please repeat the statement, I'm okay with enjoying Pesach foods.
I'm okay with enjoying Pesach foods.
Going.
I'm okay with enjoying Pesach foods. I'm okay with enjoying Pesach foods. I'm okay with enjoying Pesach foods.
Okay. You can stop. Okay, so I have a chart here where I'm checking different categories, and we're in the lost, vulnerable, sort of heart, and interestingly enough, with where all the hormones live, we're in that kind of area. Okay, so the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to, you just need to listen. I'm going to throw some emotions at her, and I'm testing her to see what emotion is actually being present in her subconscious and unconscious. So we have lost, vulnerable in all those emotions, and we have frightfully overjoyed in all those emotions. We have lost, vulnerable, abandoned. So, my dear Justine, your body, your unconscious is saying, when I make the statement, I'm okay with enjoying Pesach foods, what comes up is abandonment.
Is a what?
Abandonment.
Abandonment. Wow. Okay.
So now I need your help in taking a look at how that makes sense or how you relate to that.
Wow. That's interesting. I'm wondering where that abandonment would even come from.
I don't know. It could
How
be,
do I get to the bottom of something like that? Like if it's not something that comes up for me immediately.
well, you'll
Well,
start.
maybe okay. So let me maybe relate it to like relationships with a boyfriend where it ended and I felt abandoned from something. No?
We're staying in the present. So we're always starting in the present. And so I like
Okay.
you to take a look at, where do I feel abandoned? Where do I
Right
currently
now in my
right
life.
now?
It's interesting because it's not something I ever really feel.
Yeah, and this is good because it's like sometimes we don't want to see or we can't see.
Can I feel abandoned by myself? Is that a
Oh,
possibility?
absolutely. We can
Okay.
definitely
Because that's the
feel
only thing
abandoned.
that I can even think of. Like I can't think of like any family that I feel abandoned by, or children, maybe my teenage children sometimes. But if anything, it's probably more me not being truly there for myself. Does that make sense?
Totally.
Okay.
And how are you not truly there for yourself?
Probably because, and this is something I've been working on, is trying to just balance my time a little bit better. I've been so involved and enjoying the work that I do, and also being new to Israel, that I'm pushing pretty hard, and I feel that I'm not always giving myself the time to relax or the time to even spend like go and spend time with my mother, which I used to do a lot more before I I got more involved in working in my business.
Okay, so you can see, you guys who are watching this, that first of all, thank you for being so open and vulnerable. I know, as I said, this is totally unrehearsed. You can see that when we take a closer look, that there are ways that you can relate to the abandonment, and it doesn't always have to be this, oh my God, somebody left me at the corner of the store and they never came back. Abandonment there's shows up in very subtle levels. And what you said before, by the way, is also true, that you do feel a little bit abandoned. At least your body is saying, I do feel a little bit abandoned by my teenage children because they're no longer needing me the way they needed me when they were younger, and my role as a mother is it's changing.
When you
Okay.
were speaking, a memory popped up, and I don't know if this is relevant. When you said being left on a street corner, I had a memory of getting separated from my mother in a very big store in South Africa. It
Wow.
was Pick and Pay hypermarket, and I don't even remember how I got from where. Obviously, I was separated from her. I can't remember how old I was. I must have been maybe 5, 6 years old, and they took me to wherever the manager was, and they had announced on the intercom that I was there, and my mother then came and reunited with me, and that just popped into my head. So I wonder if that isn't connected.
We'll see. We'll see.
Okay.
So now we're going to find out what is actually connected. And sometimes it's the things that we remember, and sometimes it actually goes deeper because we're working below language. So you just need to listen. The concept of the most original event where there was abandonment present in terms of either abandonment self or feeling abandoned by loved ones, in a deep and significant way. So we have conception to birth and birth to 10, time of birth, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So indeed, this is actually what's showing up, that something happened around the age of 4 years old where you felt abandoned. And I
Wow.
think you kind of preempted where we were going to go, in a good way, that we are in the grocery store. That means, right? Didn't you say grocery store?
Yes.
We're around food, and my mother somehow lost her, and I get disconnected. And I wonder if you can remember anything about them finding you, or how they, what they did for the short period of time that whoever the adults were with you?
I think they probably gave me something to eat.
Of course, they gave you something to eat.
To calm me down and distract me until my mother came.
Of course, that's the, do you want a lollipop? Do you want to, of course. I mean, the chances of that happen is 99.9% of the time. Because
Wow. Wow.
okay, so now what we're going to do is we're going to help Justine sort of neutralize that experience from her consciousness. And for those of you who are watching, just be patient. It'll take a couple of minutes. So what I'd like you to do, and actually you can follow along. Why don't we do this? We have these points on our head, our forehead. They're called neurovascular points. And when we rub them, we bring calmness to our system. Why? So, oftentimes, when people sit like this, they're thinking, they're like, they look like they're worried, and you're starting to rub your forehead. That's why it's like we have, these points, like I said, they're called neurovascular points. So one hand goes on your forehead, and the other hand, Justine, goes below, sort of like below your bladder. You want to just hold that part of your body. And I'm going to guide you through a short meditation. And those of you who are watching, you can, go along or and listen, or maybe think about a time where you felt abandoned. So go ahead and close your eyes for a moment and take a few deep breaths. So first thing that what we want to do, and I close my eyes as well, we want to connect with ourselves. We talked a lot, and just now, even though we are live here, we just want to be with ourselves, and all of our energies are going to Justine, and just be with yourself. And I want to appreciate you for your braveness and your strength and your vulnerability, and for the amazing woman that you are. Now, all of you, including Justine, just find that place inside of you where only you have access. There's this part inside of us where it's only us, our consciousness. We think, we feel, and we bring people in. We have experiences, and that's where I want you to go. But once you found that place, just take a moment to send some light and love, however you do that, into that space. And in your mind's eye or on a screen in front of you, allow yourself to see that scene that you just talked to me about. You are in a grocery store, you got separated from your mom, and you felt so abandoned. And then usually what happens is that we interpret that in some way, even if we're 4 years old. Now is the time for you to feel that abandonment in full force. When you breathe in, feel it as deeply as you can. And when you breathe out, just let it go. Release it from your consciousness. So when you breathe in, feel the abandonment. And when you breathe out, just let it go. And we're going to give Justine some time to do this. And when she feels ready, lighter or a shift, she can let us know. And for those of you who are watching this, just allow yourself to be with yourself and breathe in, around how you've been feeling, maybe around the goals that you have around wellness and, letting go and food and how to deal with food. So just keep breathing. Feel those feelings. And when you breathe out, you can let them go. And if there's a particular scene that you have in mind, you can envision that as well.
Okay, I feel good. I feel like I've breathed enough.
Okay, so you can let go of your hands, and if you still need a moment or so there, if you're watching, that's okay. So I'm going to ask Justine the same thing that I asked in the beginning. I'm okay with enjoying Pesach food.
I need to say it again.
Yes, you do.
I'm okay with enjoying Pesach food.
Okay, so you can't see, but now the muscle test is strong.
Wow.
And of course, this is based on trust. But how do you feel?
I think it's strange to feel it. It was so unexpected what came up that I feel like I'm still processing it. Is that normal?
Yeah, but I mean, do you feel like a shift, or you feel like you're still in
I feel
process?
calmer.
Or hmm?
I feel quite calm. I think that's the general feeling that I have now.
Good. So if we had if we were monitoring her pulse, or we had, looked at her brain waves, you would see that it's different now. There's quite a bit of studies that have been done around this. So, and what we know now is something has changed in her consciousness. Now, does that mean that everything will be different? We don't know. Sometimes it is that. It's that one thing that will change everything. Oftentimes, it's a little bit like an onion or like a rose. There's many petals or many layers that we have to peel until we get to what we want to get to. But this is basically the process. And the glasses that I have on always look at if there's no unconscious or subconscious congruity, then whatever you're doing takes so much more effort in order for you to get from A to B that it just makes it harder.
Wow.
So thank you for,
Thank you. Wow. That was
yeah.
really fascinating. If anybody's got any questions, I'm going to look over at the chat if there's anything you want to post. I can see we've got some firm people who've been with us the whole time, and I really appreciate it. If you've got any questions, we're happy to address it. And I'd love to, just for the remainder of the time, just chat a little bit perhaps about how this can be done in a more, like in the most practical way. And I think the important thing is that everyone's understanding that there's so many different layers to how we address this feeling of, sure, I feel so much calmer. It's quite amazing. This thought about getting to Pesach and the foods to be that we eat and feeling out of control and feeling like we sabotage. And I think just from my side, and Barbara, maybe you can give a little bit more insight from your perspective in the work that you do. But I always try to encourage, and those of you who are on the call and those of you watching on the replay, that we focus on what we can have. We focus on what we are doing, on what we are able to do, as opposed to feeling stuck and overwhelmed in what we can't have, what we aren't able to do. And in fact, I do this a lot with my clients because I feel that we live with so much expectation and so much desire for perfection that is what often robs us of being able to appreciate what we do have, what we are doing, and the progress that we do make. So one of my favorite statements is that we should be focusing on progress and not perfection. And I think the same way that, Barbara, you've brought up that, in the work that you do, there are many different layers. And I feel like that's very similar in the work that I do as well. Very rarely do I work with somebody and it's a very quick process. And obviously, I want to make it as effective for the woman that I'm working with as possible. But there are often very many of these layers that go together with our relationship with food. And at Pesach time, it's very fascinating. And I'm not sure if you know this, but there is a healing that happens at the Seder when we eat matzah, which is amazing. I gave a shiur about it last year and the year before. And I was speaking to a client today, and one of the things that I really try to encourage her to be aware of now that we're building up to Pesach, in my own mind, I'm trying to plan, when am I changing over my kitchen? Where's the 24-hour period that it's going to, not be touched for, that I can start cooking? And I said to her, we generally put so much pressure on ourselves to get to that Seder that we don't even get to enjoy the meal itself because we're so tired and we're just waiting to eat and then go to sleep. And the whole beauty of this time of year is the Seder itself. There's so much there's so much good energy around it, and there's such a formula that we are supposed to be going through when we experience it. So I think, if anything, if the message that I can give is to be mindful of the energy, mindful of your capacity, of what you can do, and really be able to do things in a way that still gives the whole experience meaning, so that you don't overwhelm and deplete yourselves, and therefore set yourselves up for needing to have all the foods that would normally soothe you when you're feeling so depleted and so overwhelmed by what you've had to do. So I've got also, Barbara, if you want to give any insights about that.
Well, I think I think what you say makes a lot of sense. Last year I was totally freaked out about Pesach because I don't eat gluten, and I'm like, what am I going to do? It's like I have everywhere you go. It's like I felt even more limited in what I was able to eat. Because it just felt difficult because gluten-free matzah is just even harder to come by than gluten-free bread. And so I was like dreading the whole process. And at some point I said, oh, what the hell? I would just do with what there is. So I think it's really important to applaud ourselves on all the wins that we have, and maybe simplify it, and not have, the million dishes that you would usually have, or maybe allow yourself to ask for help. And so that it's not just, you that is doing all the work. So, I do a coaching group for women, and one of the women wrote to me the other day. It's like, I don't like to ask for help. I really have a hard time for asking for help. Well, I understand that, but what comes with that is that, you have to do everything yourself. And maybe I would do it differently, and be okay with that, and enjoy the different ways of doing things, and so that it can be easier. And I think, allow yourself to prepare for what is there, how can I soothe myself? Are there different strategies that this year I can soothe myself? We're going to a Seder, and the person is vegan. So we have no gluten, vegan. Okay. And I was asked to prepare, a vegan, of course, has to be kosher, dessert for Passover. And I was just, okay, let me just be creative and see what I can do.
I've got a
About
great
it.
recipe for you. I'll send it.
Okay, gluten-free vegan dessert.
Okay, I've got it. In fact, one of the ladies in my current group program shared a whole lot of recipes on the group yesterday. So I'm happy to
Fantastic.
share that on. Yes,
Right.
great.
Yeah. So, it's important, you really, that we clap ourselves on. And then if the judgment comes in, that you look at the judgment and forgive yourself, because we can be so critical. One of the tools that I teach my clients is that I have this notion of how do I deal with my inner critic, which we call the gremlin. When does a gremlin show up, and what are the favorite sayings, and what does a gremlin do around food? And so that I can, love my gremlin, support my gremlin, maybe assign the gremlin even a different role. And maybe I can allow myself to be negative in a constructive way. So maybe I take 5 minutes and vent about Pesach and all the things that I feel restricted, but I do it in a way with the focus and the intention of letting out my negativity, and transmuting it or neutralizing it. And so then I can be okay. Now that I let go of my negativity, my fear, my angst, my anxiety about it, okay, now what is present for myself?
I love that. I think that's amazing. That's something that I also work with. And generally, I ask the ladies to choose a face for what that inner critic looks like. But I think it's also so valuable to be able to have like a structured amount of time which you allow yourself to vent, because we don't want to reject that part of ourselves. We don't want to try and suppress it or ignore it, because then the voice, speaks even louder. I love the thought of a gremlin. Like, allow it its opportunity to express itself, to have all the worries and the fears and the whatever come out, and then move on. I love that. I think that's great.
Right.
If
It's,
anybody
you
else
know,
wants to type in the chat, if they find that valuable, that would be amazing to hear as well.
well, think about your kids when they were young. They have a temper tantrum and then they're done.
Yeah.
It's like that. Let me have a temper tantrum about Passover and all the things I need to do and get ready and prepare. In all the ways, which means I work with the United States and I work with, Europe, and maybe they don't have the whole week off. So it's like, and the food that I have to prepare and whatnot. And so I just, take my 5 minutes and just complain so deeply that I'm done with it. Don't hold back. So when you do this process, do not hold back. Go outside or scream in your car or whatever you need to do. Get your frustration, your upset out, and you'll know that you'll feel good afterwards.
I love that. Wonderful. Amazing. Barbara, I am so happy that we met tonight, and I'm so grateful for the woman who showed up live, and for those who are going to watch this on the replay. Thank you for being with us. I'm going to share so I've got a recipe download. So for those of you who haven't already downloaded, you're more than welcome to grab that, because I think that'll also just give you some really delicious and balanced ideas of what to be able to eat over Pesach. So you too can say the same statement that I did, that I am happy and excited to enjoy the Pesach food. And hopefully now, after doing the wonderful work with Barbara tonight, there will be no inner blocks against that. And I know, Barbara, you do work one-on-one with people, and I know that you've also got a group program coming up at the end of April. So if anybody wants to get in touch with you, I'll put your information in the chat. And I also, obviously, for anybody who wants to do any further work with me, I also do one-on-one work, and I have my next opening of my group program, which is starting on the 30th of April. So after Pesach, everybody can get past all the Chagim and then the holidays that come after that. So Barbara, any last thoughts, any last pearls of wisdom before we end tonight?
Well, I think I mentioned it already, but it's good to say again. Really love yourself as much as you can. Be generous, gentle, kind to yourself, and only commit to the things that you really feel like you're capable of doing. So, because you want to be true to your word, because every time that you keep your word, your self-esteem will go up. So don't overcommit, don't have any crazy goals. Just be realistic with what your goals are around this time, and then love yourself and clap yourself on every day, several times a day. And I think that is the best and most wonderful things that we can do for ourselves.
Beautiful, wise words to end. Thank you so much. It definitely resonates for me, because that's the advice that I give all the clients that I work with, that we need to become our own best cheerleaders. We need to learn to be gentle with ourselves, to have compassion for when things don't go according to the way that maybe we anticipated, and to use those opportunities to observe what happened so that we can make a different choice the next time, instead of being critical and judgmental of ourselves in those moments. So just wishing you all, and thank you, Barbara, to you as well, a Chag Kasher Pesach V'Sameach. And hopefully this has given you some inspiration, some different ideas of how you can approach Pesach, life, challenge in a different way, that there are different avenues for you to take, so that you don't have to stay blocked and stuck in patterns and question why, even though you may want to make positive changes and choose differently, that there may be areas that are stuck. So Barbara is amazing to work with if that's something that affects you. Thank you so much, Barbara.
Thanks for having me, and Chag Sameach.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody. I'm so grateful for you for being here with us. Take care.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.